their processes said if the system says something is bad.
All right, welcome to today's recap for the day. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and yeah, a little bit of volatility this morning. Finally, we get a little bit of movement this morning. It's been such a small move for the indices on a day-to-day basis that I was actually welcoming this. I think I've been trading this pretty appropriately the last few days. Just making sure that I've had some some hedges in place for options for my option portfolio.
And I think that's the real message.
This way, when we do get a pullback, I've got a little bit of insurance and also keeping some money on the sidelines, considering the huge run-up we have. However, by the end of the day, we managed to claw all the way back. So S&P is now up after hours here a little bit. So it's pretty resilient. This market just does not want to stay down. Q's actually finished down 40 basis points, which again, I would be okay with like a couple days of volatility just to kind of shake some people out of this market a little bit. But I know some people have been making points that there's a lot of money that's on the sidelines waiting to get into this on any dip, and that may very well be the reason why we recover so quickly when there's a little bit of volatility. But so I'm kind of a little bit disappointed. I did do a couple things today, and I did buy some things on a pullback, but I would really like a couple days just to kind of wash out the weak hands in this market and just kind of reset these things back. But we're not. It is what it is. You can't get exactly what you want. So you go back. Look at small caps. So the trade that we put on in the room a couple weeks back is we sold Russell small cap futures when things got overbought. And we were able to take that off. We took the majority of it off 2 days. I took the majority of it off 2 days ago, but I took the rest off today, this morning, for a huge winner. So, the hedges, which I was going over at the end of the day in the trading room, hedges. Some people they really want to manage their hedges and so forth. And hedges are just that. They're there as insurance. They're there to protect you. So that was why I kept the last piece on and said, hey, if we happen to get a little bit more volatility towards the end of the week, I'm a little bit protected. So that worked pretty well for that. Looking at IWM, it's now no longer overbought. And we'll see what it does here. It did save here the top of value. So it's pretty bullish. Looking at the Qs, NASDAQ, you have this floating hammer on the 20-day moving average. I mean, that's also pretty bullish as well. Just when you think that we might start to come in and retest, maybe come into here. So we're above the 20-day moving average, and we've got a floating hammer here. Same thing with semis. Those are still way overbought. So this is what I was really hoping, was that these would come in here pretty strongly. But you could see for the second day in a row, we explored some lower levels, and buyers came right back into this group. So still way overbought here on the RSI. And I am surprised that we did not take more of a hit in this group, and then see where the dust settles. But like I said, it is what it is. Another group that got beaten up today was the Chinese internets. These didn't come back so much. They did rebound from the lows. Again, you have to keep in mind, you have to really watch what the Hang Seng does overnight. If you're going to make traffic in this name, I think it's a must-watch to see what the Hang Seng does every night. There is such a high correlation between the Hang Seng and the Chinese Internet Group. When they're down, the Chinese Internet Group is going to get hit. So they were down about 3.3%. Let's see what the Hang Seng does tomorrow night. If it recovers some, then you may see a bounce back in this group. But we did see a little bit of put buying in names like JD.com, just other names that, these are very volatile names in this portfolio. So just bear that in mind, that they are going to move around if there's a little bit of volatility in that Hang Seng index overnight. So those were the worst performers. Energy stocks down again. I think we talked about that in last night's video, how crude, even though crude was going up at the beginning of the week, energy stocks were not, and they continue to fall here. Look at the OIH, all the way back to the 50-day moving average.
that evening.
XOP ended up down 60 basis points,
And not being able to call out
but above the opening.
Federal Reserve and the British government.
And XLE also down. So these energy stocks, I know everybody wants to get into these energy stocks. You hear it time and time again. This is going to be the next group that everybody rushes into, and we see the rotation, but they're not ready. They're still not ready yet. A lot of consolidation here. So, you know, keep an eye on that 200-day moving average. It looks like we're back below non-dividend adjusted.
This was our first sort of
what else got hit a little bit today? The biotechs. Biotechs are setting up, I think, maybe not exactly yet. Well, we'll see. We hung in here, but you could see how many red bars in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Talk about ready to buy the dip. I think this is a great area to get involved in biotech. Big run up, consolidation, run up, a give back. And we'll see what this thing does right at the top of value. That's your support. Keep in mind, you know, keep on watch. Basically, 84.74.
One of the real lessons of 1987.
84.74 is your support, and we'll see if we can actually get a reversal tomorrow off of this bar. But again, a lot of consecutive days down. Digesting some of that big up move, so could be a place to get back involved. It's going to look a little bit different than IBB, which is all biotechs. Again, XPI is equally weighted, so you got a lot of small caps in there along with the large caps. All right, so that group was down. Also, some robotic stocks were down. Was also making a little joke about this too. You know, we've been talking about these robotic stocks now for months, basically since the beginning of the year. Now they're starting to talk about them on CNBC. So it could be that the trade is getting a little bit long in the tooth. I'm not saying that to go out and sell these names that we've been talking about all year, but it sounds like once the media gets a hold of a trade that's been very successful, sometimes that often signals it's the end of the run. So we'll see. It actually came back hammer bar in this one as well. I won't do that. I won't sell these stocks. Basically, this Robo is the biggest position that I have in my IRA, and it's been on an absolute huge run since we gave that webinar back in April on the robotic stocks and the robotics ETFs. So I won't be selling that just on the media mentioning it, although it does make me antsy. I will be looking at probably the 50-day moving average as my stop price to get out of that group. So until then, we'll see what happens. Names that did well today, or groups that did well, the home builders. So NVR had some really good earnings. I tweeted about this earlier in the day, and then a whole bunch of copycats retweeted what I had to say, which is fine. Didn't give me credit. I saw one or two guys almost put exactly what I put verbatim, but that's all right. NVR was up 7% today. ITB up huge, so up 1.7%. Names like DHI, which is the big name that we've seen call buying in, but really big extension to the upside. So really positive move out of that group today. XHB. So again, ITB is really, I know it's called the home construction ETF, but there's 60% home builders in this ETF.
Slammed Amazon this week for their environmental practices,
and you can see what I mean here.
So I wonder whether
rather than take my word for it,
messaging to those guys. They have
64% home builders in the ITB ETF versus only 32% in the ETF that's called the Home Builders ETF. So go figure. Twice as many home builders in ITB. So just make sure that you're aware of that. This also had a nice day today, up over 1%. Utilities actually did pretty well today. Bonds and gold were both up, but they gave back some of their gains, especially TLT. So bonds sold off at the end of the day. Might as well take silver. Sorry, not silver. Steel was also up. Healthcare names were also up, so they continued their rally. Remember that big call buyer earlier in the week, which they did take down some of that position. I think they had they bought about 40,000 call options. I think it was on Monday, and they took down part of that trade. They took down, I think, about a third of that trade yesterday. But still, 52-week high in XLV. A couple other areas, we'll just kind of look at the VIX, see what that did today. That got up to, I think, 1144 today. And again, we just don't want to, big sell-off from the highs in the VIX. So we'll leave it there. For the day, there was a as far as option activity, could basically be summarized today. We just really didn't see, I was putting out a lot of updates on Twitter this morning. We really didn't see, when we took that second leg down this morning.
Established by MetLife.
We'll look at NASDAQ. When we took this, we opened up here. We tried to rally a little bit and kind of went to a little bit lower. But other than seeing a couple Qs put buyers and a couple S&P put buyers, which was mainly short-dated stuff, there really wasn't any major put buying. There wasn't any, for the first hour, there wasn't any crazy call buying either, just very selective call buying. And then we started to see some bottom feeders come in and buy a little bit of upside calls and some things. So, Micron was one name where we saw some calls. BYD saw some calls hit. I have to check the open interest on this tomorrow because this one already had open interest. But a couple other things like OLED, a little bit of JP Morgan calls, a little bit of Target calls, Netflix, a little bit of Nvidia, weekly stuff, a lot of short-dated stuff. HUN, this was calls that we saw last Friday. It looks like they added to their January 30 position today. Roku, which is I think a little bit too risky for me. I didn't play it for next week's calls. So that was it. There just wasn't a ton of action today off of the volatility. All right, so I'll leave it there for tonight. Have a great night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.